Welcome, everybody, to Orthodox Review, the most uneducated educational program on the internet. Today, I am your host, Raphael, the guy with 1 1/2 thumbs. And today, my very, very, very special guest on the show is a multi-talented, multifaceted sort of fella. He's a great Orthodox Christian. He's a rapper. He's a businessman. He's a multi-podcaster and all-around swell fella, Mr. Jamey Bennett, a.k.a. Chunjay. Longtime buddy,
Man.
who definitely helped me in my journey to Orthodoxy in the early days of the internet, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that. But welcome to the show, Jamey.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man, and thanks for those kind words. I will send the check in the mail next week.
Thank you. Rent is due on the 1st. Wow, where to begin? So, the reason I reached out to you in the first place is because you have a new podcast on Ancient Faith Radio, which, being a fan of not only the Old Testament, but the pseudo-apocryphal sort of stuff that we as Orthodox have in our canon, and Catholics and Protestants don't, it's nice to see someone kind of putting that out there. It is called Bad Books of the Bible.
That's the one.
So how did this come about? Like, what was kind of the catalyst for that?
Yeah, so really it was originally Joel's idea. So my co-host is Joel Miller, and he's a buddy of mine. We've been friends for close to 2 decades now. And funny enough, we actually knew each other back in our California days. We didn't even live anywhere near each other in our California days, but we met at a Protestant theology conference, and we became friends. And then over the years, we stayed in touch. He happened to move to Nashville not long after I did years ago. I was there for music. He was there for publishing. We've just been friends, and we've done some projects together, and we've also talked about a lot more projects than we've done together. We get these ideas. In fact, you may remember my largely inactive at the moment field guide to the Orthodox Church.
Oh, yeah.
orthodoxfieldguide.com, and we also have a like page. That was originally his idea. That was a project we were going to do together.
Oh, wow.
And he just ran out of time, and I said, do you mind if I keep doing it? He said, go ahead. So we've just been always like trying to line up with, and he's an idea guy, I'm an idea guy. We're always thinking of stuff to do. And when he came to me with that one, I thought, gosh, that would be so cool to do. For one thing, I have a master's degree in biblical studies.
Okay.
I didn't study these books for my master's degree.
Wow.
I studied at a Baptist school, and, these books were not really on the radar. I don't remember them even being mentioned, and if they were, it would have been negative.
Yes.
So when he came to me about the project idea, I was really intrigued, and as we kind of fleshed it out, I especially liked one of the angles that we're taking with the show is we're basically trying to introduce people to these books for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And probably most of your viewers and listeners are familiar, but essentially for those who are not, we're talking about the books of the Old Testament that have been removed by certain Christians and largely by the Jewish community as well, but have always been included in the Orthodox Old Testament.
Okay.
So these are not books we grew up with, but these are books we've embraced as we came into Orthodoxy and thought they'd be worth exploring. And the part of the thing too, like, I know one of the things you talk about is, being uneducated, and, you're not coming across as the expert, and really neither are we. We're 2 laymen, while I do have a master's degree in biblical studies, and that counts for something, I guess, we really aren't experts in these books. And so what we're trying to do is dig in and present the material the way I might, well, not the way, but present the material in a similar way as you might in a parish context.
Okay.
Where, you're having a Bible study, you're not necessarily there with the greatest scholar in the world, but you're getting really good material, and the presenter's doing some homework.
Right on. And so now, you were, and I don't know if you still are, a catechist at your local parish.
Yeah.
So with the way you are approaching this material, are you drawing from that to kind of
Yeah, and in fact, we're actually right in the thick of our latest round of catechism classes, and so we're actually even recommending this in our church as a resource to our catechumens.
Okay.
Um, I guess they're not officially catechumens yet, but they're right now they're
Inquirers,
inquirers.
yeah.
Yeah, so we've recommended it to them as a resource for them to be able to go deeper, and and also the experience that I've had the last few years working with catechumens and inquirers,
Hmm.
I think has given me a lot more appreciation and insight into presenting orthodoxy in a way that people can understand it the first time.
Yeah.
Um, it's such a rich faith and a deep faith. I mean, we're obviously not going to I don't fully comprehend it. None of us do.
Yeah.
Isn't that part of the point? It's
I,
beyond us.
I would say anyone who says they do needs to start reading their Bible again.
Yeah, exactly. So like really what I want to do is I want to go into these books, present them to someone potentially for the first time.
Hmm.
And whether they are Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, or just curious.
Hmm.
They might even be Jewish or no faith at all, but they're just curious from a literary standpoint even. I think we provide a little value for everyone. Now, of course, anytime you try to provide something for everyone, someone's going to be disappointed. But we really are trying to do our best to make it accessible,
Hmm.
whether people view it as scripture or not, that they can access it, see its relevance, and then also connect it to other parts of scripture,
Yeah.
and maybe even take something out that benefits their devotional life, enriches their relationships with their friends and family, that sort of thing.
Excellent. And now, so working with Ancient Faith Radio, how's that experience been for you? Because I know you have other podcasts like
Sure,
Beards, Brews, and Shipwrecks, which we'll talk about in a minute, and
sure.
you've done other podcasts up. So working with like an online radio show,
Yeah.
so to speak, how's that experience been for you? Is it vastly different from the regular podcasting experience?
Yeah, it's been really good. And I should also add, there's also a school component to this in that I'm in the Antiochian House of Studies,
Hmm.
and I'm doing their Masters of Applied Orthodox Theology
Oh,
program.
wow.
And as part of that, you have to have a project in the spring, your first 2 years before
Hmm.
you get to the thesis.
Right.
And a lot of people teach a Bible study at church, or someone might do some sermons or develop some resources that can be published. But it's a little project you work on with your priest
Hmm.
and under the oversight of someone from the school.
Okay.
So this project actually ended up being a nice mixture of me and Joel just saying that here's an idea we'd like to do,
Hmm.
working with Ancient Faith and working with my priest and the Antiochian House of Studies. So that was just to kick it off. The Antiochian House of Studies does not necessarily endorse the content or whatever. They just kind of oversaw the
Right.
development of the show.
Okay.
Any errors in that are all our fault.
Yes.
And same with Ancient Faith.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, if we spouted some heresy, they would definitely say something.
Hmm.
But it's not like just because it's on Ancient Faith that they've vetted every last word. We're creating something with pastoral oversight,
Okay.
and they're trusting the process.
Right on.
But what that does, though, is it gives us access to people we might not have been able to reach.
Hmm.
Ancient Faith is a platform, and so it's been really great to be kind of like right in the middle of that little Ancient Faith universe, as the
Yeah.
kids say.
Yeah. Right on. And that, of course, brings us to your other podcast, which thank you again for having me as a guest on there. So this is revenge, I suppose. But Beards, Brews, and Shipwrecks. Did I get that in the right order?
Brews, Beards, and Shipwrecks.
Brews, Beards, and Shipwrecks. I don't know.
Yeah. And we're so excited to have you on. I wonder who's going to be first to air the episode, though, you or us.
I did not record it, so I'm leaving that one.
Well,
up to you.
I mean, you might beat us with this one.
Possibly. I mean, I could always hold it back. Fair is fair.
But, yeah. No, we were actually really happy to have you on Brews, Beards, and Shipwrecks. And gosh, I mean, where do you want to where do you want to start with this one?
Well,
because
I'm a big fan of kind of picking people's brains as to what makes them do what they do when it comes to content
Yeah.
creation. So,
Sure.
so I guess the same questions from the first would apply to this. Like, what's the
Okay.
genesis of this site? Like, where did this come from? Was
Okay.
this just like you and your buddy being like, hey, let's just, talk about stuff because we like beer and we have beards,
Sure. Sure. Yeah, a lot of this comes back to really my music group, Royal
hmm
Ruckus. So, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a rapper. I've been rapping since I was like 12. Um, I don't fit the typical profile of a rapper
That's
necessarily, but
true.
that's been part of the shtick too. I mean, it's surprising, it's unexpected, and it's kind of dorky.
I gotta tell
Um,
you though, quick side note.
sure. Go ahead.
I was at the grocery store earlier today with my roommate, and he picks up a bottle of coconut water, and I immediately bust into coconuts.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That is such a fun song
Oh
too.
yeah. Sorry,
Yeah, and we rap about weird stuff like that, coconuts and kombucha and all kinds of things. So,
right on.
yeah, so really it came back to my experience with Royal Ruckus, and I think basically there were two things in my head at the time. I'd been kind of off the music scene for a few years. I was coming back, and I'm like, I don't want to just shove my music down everybody's throat all the time, but I
hmm
need to have a platform that reminds people of my music. So I
Yes.
was like, podcast is a great way to do it. People, if I create value, something interesting for someone to listen to, and I get to push my music at the same time, it's a win for me, and it's great content for the listener.
Right.
Um, the second thing to that was, as a Christian, and I've been a Christian most of my life. I mean, basically, as long as I can remember, I've been some kind of Christian.
hmm
Um, it's not to say I haven't had moments of struggle or walk away from the church for a while or whatever. That's still a thing. But I've more or less always just been a Christian.
Yeah.
And as such, I ran with a lot of Christian rappers back in the day. And many of my friends in the Christian music world in general, in the Christian rap world in particular, have lost their faith.
Yeah.
They're agnostic now, or they've
You,
gone into some other religion.
you see that a
Um,
lot also in the Christian rock community. With
really?
some of the old guard, a lot of them just coming out and making statements of like, we're agnostic, we're atheist,
Sure.
and they just kind of go off and do their own thing. It's kind of disheartening. It's kind of saddening.
Yeah.
But
Well, and you get in the Christian rock world too. I mean, you get some people that haven't left the faith necessarily, but like, yeah. So also in the Christian rock world, I mean, you've got things like the Bad Christian podcast, and I kind of like that. I don't listen to every episode, but I listen to a few episodes a year
mhm.
when they have someone on that I'm really interested in. But what I've noticed is over and over, people's faith has been significantly reshaped.
Yeah.
If they have any faith left at all. And and so for me, it dawned on me that becoming Orthodox was what I did, and so my faith was reshaped too. So I thought, well, gosh, we're all kind of like we've all done something similar. So the original idea for Bruised Beards and Shipwrecks was I want to have conversations with my music friends
hmm
who used to be in the Christian music world,
Okay.
now have gone on, and I want to hear their story, how they ended up changing their mind about it or whatever. So that was the original idea. Of course, the actual execution of it is much broader than musicians.
hmm
And I like to say that the byline for the show is like, because everyone has a story.
Right.
And so to me, like, I just want to hear people's stories, and particularly the stories of difficult things that people have overcome.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really where the value of that show is for me, and what keeps me interested in it is hearing people's struggles that they've overcome,
hmm
or are in the process of overcoming.
Right on.
And
So,
and then I should also say I have a co-host on that one as well. He
yeah.
was not there at the beginning.
hmm
My co-host is Nomadic Vagabond.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you about him.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So basically, yeah, I think I was just having a hard time keeping up with the show
hmm
as a one-man show, and I was overthinking the editing. You listen to the early episodes, and it's almost like I got a radio show, and I'm putting hip hop beats on in the background, and I'm welcoming people on, and it's like I've kind of just cut through a lot of that vibe.
Uh-huh.
I loved it. I loved
Yeah.
doing that. It's just very time consuming, and it's also not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of the hip hop people loved that, but people that aren't into rap were like, "Gosh, I really enjoyed that interview, but I wish that beat hadn't been going the entire time."
Yeah.
So I just kind of reshaped it, and then I started thinking, who can I work with that can help share some of the load,
Mm-hmm.
and take the podcast, further into the future. And Nomadic has been on my radar through social media primarily, but Christian dude, he's an Orthodox convert like me.
Mm-hmm.
He's a rapper like me. He was part of a compilation series I'd been on. Like, so there were like a few like
A lot of
close
parallels.
brushes with
Yeah.
him. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so I hit him up one day just out of the blue. I said, "Hey, I got a crazy idea I want to run by you." We'd never even spoken on the phone until I pitched him joining the show.
Oh, that's
So
rad.
yeah.
That's really cool.
Now we're a little less steady with that one.
Eh.
The structure of these two shows are quite different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Bad Books is like 30 minutes once a week.
Yeah.
Um, this one's more free-flowing conversation,
Mm-hmm.
hour and a half, 2.5 hours, where we're getting to know someone.
Right.
So they're a little different in their style.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. And finally, let's talk about Royal Ruckus for a
Okay.
little bit. Now, I don't. I have not done really any musical promotion on Orthodox Review.
Sure.
It's just never kind of been a thing, but your music has come up in passing from time to
Okay.
time, especially if I'm wearing one of your T-shirts.
Sure.
But so now you started Royal Ruckus when you were a teenager,
Yeah.
and then it's kind of always had Christian undertones, from what I understand. But
Yeah.
now with let's say from Summer of Cicadas on, there's more of an Orthodox Christian undertone.
Sure.
And I know there was also a hiatus involved there for a while.
Yeah.
So how did you bring Orthodoxy in to Royal Ruckus? Like just deciding to pick back up in recording hip hop and incorporating your faith into that. What was
Yeah.
how did that? What was that like?
Well, for one thing, I should be clear that Royal Ruckus is a two-man team,
Mm-hmm.
and my partner is not Orthodox.
Okay.
Now we grew up at the same non-denominational church, so we've known each other since we were kids. We started making music as teenagers. Starting we were literally youth group kids when we started.
Okay.
Our first concert was a youth group show.
Nice.
So you get an idea where we came from.
Mm-hmm.
When we kind of went out and we were having some success with our music, I mean, that's how we ended up in Nashville. We did some national tours and stuff like that. That's when the faith, I think, started shifting. I got into Calvinism for a while. Mike was studying a lot of the same stuff I was studying, maybe not to the same degree I was, but we were pretty parallel. And when we kind of went on hiatus, we were both part of an Anglican church.
Okay.
And we never officially broke up as a group. Our lives just kind of went separate ways.
Mm.
And that's when I converted to Orthodoxy. And then we put out a record in, I want to say like 2011, that was a collection of old stuff with a few new songs.
Okay.
And that was called Rumors of Our Demise Have Been Greatly Exaggerated.
Yes.
Rumors is the first time you start catching Orthodoxy coming into my lyrics.
Okay.
There's even a Hail Mary lyric in the opening song that you might miss,
Nice.
So there's, you start finding some of that in there. But at some point, Mike and I just had a conversation, and he more or less handed over editorial decisions to me.
Okay.
Not entirely. I mean, there are limits. I'm sure if I don't know. I'm sure I could push the limit somewhere, and he would at some point say, I don't know about this. But so far we haven't hit it. I mean, Unexpected Joy came out, 2 years ago this week.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been that long. That's a thoroughly Orthodox record. Well,
As
It's
orthodox as you can
orthodox.
be. I mean,
It's right. It's orthodox, but it's orthodox from a position of someone who's struggling with their faith.
okay, makes
Um,
sense.
so yeah, so it's about faith and it's about doubt, but there's definitely orthodoxy injected in there.
Okay,
Um, and he was totally comfortable with that record.
right on.
So
And of course, Royal Ruckus has always been a very fun group, and
yeah,
I've
yeah,
never
yeah.
heard one of your records that wasn't just, you know, ear to ear grinningly fun.
Yeah,
The amount of
yeah.
humor you guys inject into your stuff is fantastic.
And
Um,
I appreciate that. And that was one of the interesting things about Unexpected Joy was because it is a heavy record.
hmm
It's not to say there isn't fun stuff on there.
Yeah.
There's a super fun song on there with Nota Verbs and KJ5 too. But other than that, that record is so heavy. I mean, the opening lyric is, "I watched a mother put her daughter in the ground."
Yeah.
No, so it's and the song is called "There Is No God." So, so we do go deep sometimes,
Yeah.
but most of the time we try to keep it lighthearted and fun, and try not to take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah. Well, I think you balanced that really well.
Well,
So,
that's very kind of you to say, sir.
oh, thank you very much for the music. So, yeah, as you are the first like real guest I've had on the show. I had Stephen Maynard
Sure,
on the show a few months back, and all we pretty much did
that's
was
great.
a live chat for 3 hours about old right orthodoxy. It was pretty cool. But you're like the first like interview I'm doing. And so I got to thinking, I was like, I've got to do something kitschy and something stupid. So I'm going to quick fire you a few questions that
Okay,
neither one of us are prepared for. And
okay.
we'll see how you answer them.
Oh man,
We're a book channel, so first
sure.
things first. Favorite prayer book?
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
so oh goodness. I have so many, like you do, that it's really hard to say.
Hmm.
Um, I just picked one up though recently. It's brand new. Orthodox Christian Prayers is what it says. Nice little leather one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, do you know what I'm talking about? All right. So here's the thing with prayer books. I'm incredibly ADHD when it comes to prayers and prayer
Welcome,
books.
welcome.
So thank you. So I like to change it up. So I'm not. To me, a prayer rule is more about consistency of taking the time to stop and pray,
Mm-hmm.
and less about the specifics of what happens when you get in the prayer corner.
Take notes on that one, kids, because that's a fantastic suggestion.
Yeah, and because if I try it any other way, if I try to have a strict rule, I always screw it up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I feel you.
so I do change it up a lot. This is,
Oh yeah, the Saint Tikhon's book.
yes, I couldn't remember who published it. You're right, it is St. Tikhon's.
That is in my top five, maybe in my
So
top three.
2019, and they
Mm-hmm.
just put out one in 2021 that just has some minor corrections, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Yes.
So this is the brand new one, and I love it. And it's got some family prayers in here, and like lifetime prayers, like birthday prayers, some things like that that are kind of neat that you don't find in every prayer book.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course it's got some akathis and things like that. So
Yes.
really love this, but I should also.
Yeah.
This is just real simple. Building a Habit of Prayer. Ancient Faith publishes it. I think it's got a glossy cover now.
Yeah.
I travel a lot. This is my go-to, or has been my go-to for traveling for years.
Okay.
That said, the last time I went out of town, I took this.
Right on.
So,
And just so you know, that's usually the prayer book that I recommend most these days. Because it's
which one?
the Saint Tikhon's,
Saint
yeah.
Tikhon?
Well,
Okay.
it's such a comfortable translation, and
It is nice, isn't it?
the Psalms in there are from a forthcoming Psalter that I keep getting little nuggets of information on.
Okay.
So, but they're taking their sweet time making sure they get it right. So, very
I,
cool,
I,
very cool.
I love that you're getting the inside scoop little by little, too.
Oh yeah, oh man, I can tell you stories at this point. It's great.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing about having a show like you have, because your show is like perfect for building those connections with the people who put these amazing books out.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It still blows my mind. It's like meeting a hero, like a rock star or something. It's like, wow,
Sure.
this is so cool.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to Stephen DeYoung from Legacy Icons this morning because of the Anthologian, which
Yes.
that review will be out. Well, the review is probably out by the time people are listening to this, but yeah, so it's one of those things that's still on pre-order for the general public,
Wow.
and it's just mind-bogglingly awesome. But yeah, no, it's cool to be able to like talk to people about that sort of stuff. So it's pretty
Absolutely, man.
cool. Keeping in with the subject of books, favorite book of the Bible, not counting the Psalms.
Oh,
Yeah.
man, you're with the hard questions. Gosh, I really like James a lot.
Okay.
Um, this might sound self-serving, but I've really fallen in love with Tobit from the work we just did
Yep.
going through Tobit. I'd liked it before, but like going through it carefully just made me absolutely fall in love. And then like John.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get enough of John when I do read it. It's such a rich gospel.
Yes.
So sorry that wasn't an easy answer, but
No, that's fine. That's fine.
that's about the best I can do, though.
They're all great selections. I gotta say, John is one of those books that before I came to Orthodoxy used to just scare me to death. It was very apocalyptic and seemed so
Sure.
dark. And then all of a sudden, when the faith was open to me, I was like, oh, this is actually beautiful. So,
Well, and it's interesting that you describe it as dark, because I bet when you started having faith, it didn't seem dark anymore. It probably seemed the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think John is just shot through with life.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just very, very bright and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And let me comment on James, just because
Sure.
that seems like a weird one. You don't hear a lot of people say that.
Mm-hmm.
And in my former context, the only thing we ever used James for, when I was a Protestant, really was to have arguments with Catholics, and we had to like get around James, And then with time, I realized actually James is incredibly pastoral and beautiful. He's talking about when you face trials, the attitude we should have, and he's out of his mind. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds.
Mm-hmm.
How do you consider a trial pure joy? You're crazy, James, but he's right, though. And if we can reframe our thinking the way he calls us to, we can not only be resilient, we can be more than resilient, but it's all through the mercy of God.
Yes.
So.
Right on. And a third and final book question. A favorite non-prayer, non-scriptural book. Could be anything. Could be nonfiction, could be fiction, could be pastoral, it could be patristics, anything. Your favorite just book in general.
Oh, so I'm flunking out here a little bit, because the first thing that came to mind is a good one, but I think it's, for a show like this, it's kind of expected, and I wish I had been more profound.
It's okay. You can be simple. I'm simple. Simple Jack over here.
Well, so I'm not necessarily saying it's a simple book, though. It's just it's cliche a little bit.
Okay.
For this context.
Okay.
For the Life of the World by Father Alexander Schmemann.
Hey, it's a great book. Can't blame you.
Blew my mind. We were actually just talking about it in the Catechism class the other night, and it was funny because, we were basically doing this thing where it's like, and you guys might want to read this book, and you might want to read this book, and you might want to read this book. It was way too much.
Yeah.
But this is what we do sometimes. And the lady who was talking about it, she pulled that one out, and she said, and down the road, you might like this book. And I started thinking about it. I went, oh my gosh, I read that book 6 years before I became Orthodox.
Wow.
That doesn't mean I was ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
But that book just, it planted a seed. It put a hook in there, and over time, I couldn't get away from Orthodoxy. And that book was, bar none, If I had to hang it on one book, that was the most impactful book for me, and remains so to this day.
Right on. Yeah, once you ring that bell, it cannot be unrung, as Lex Luthor once said.
Yeah, yeah.
That is
But
so
I mean,
cool. I mean,
there are a lot of fun books back there.
Oh yeah. No, right on. Well, that's
I did actually. If we're playing show and tell with books,
sure.
I brought a few
Hey.
that have been indispensable for bad books of the Bible, and can I show them off for a second?
Please do.
So this one probably wouldn't be featured on your show very likely, but it's an ESV Catholic edition.
Got one right there on the shelf.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So this is like my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I still use the Orthodox Study Bible, and I use other Bibles and stuff too. But for like reading, I love the ESV.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. I know there are some people that critique it and that kind of thing, but I think overall it's a really great translation. Catholic edition gets us most of the way there.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard there is like an Anglican edition that actually has all of our books.
Oh, really?
Not that the Anglicans use all of them, but Anglicans tend to be very ecumenical.
Yes.
And so I think under that influence, they included pretty much everything that Orthodoxy uses. But anyway, this gets you most of the way there. But speaking of that,
mm-hmm.
there is a Lutheran edition of the Apocrypha that is in the ESV, and it contains all of the so-called apocryphal books that the ESV translated. So it has all of our books and then some.
Ooh.
Fantastic freaking book. It's definitely, got some Lutheran leanings, but the scholarship is solid.
Okay.
I mean, there's some great notes in here. A discerning Orthodox reader is not going to have any difficulty using this. Yeah. Similar thing could be said about the Jewish annotated Apocrypha. Now this, I guess I didn't double check for sure before this conversation. I think this has all of our books, but it might be missing something. I don't think it is though. This also has Jubilees.
Oh.
Which is not in our canon, of course, but is a fascinating read.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know it's in the Coptic and Ethiopian canon. So
yes, and that's so fascinating to me that the Ethiopians have it and value it, and like it's hard not to read it and not appreciate it.
Yeah, just as a historical text. I mean,
yeah, it's just really interesting, and I think sometimes one of the reasons why I think these books are so interesting to read that are not in our canon. I'm not necessarily advocating that for everybody, but one of the reasons I enjoy reading them is some of the people who were, alive at the time of Christ and in the centuries before that were reading them.
Yes. So now you have context.
Exactly. So they, a lot of the ideas. I mean, even like you look at the Book of Enoch. I mean, that's quoted in the New Testament. That doesn't mean it's Scripture.
Yeah.
In the way we understand Scripture, but it has something to offer, evidently, or it wouldn't be quoted in the Old Testament or in the New Testament. So
now that brings up a question, and I know I've asked you this privately before.
Sure.
But for the sake of this show, I'll ask. Now on Bad Books of the Bible. Now full circle.
Yeah.
You're taking on the apocryphal books, those found in the Orthodox canon, but you mentioned books like Jubilees and Enoch.
Sure.
Is there any chance of somewhere down the line there being episodes on those books to kind of just...
Yeah, I wouldn't completely rule it out. Our agreement with Ancient Faith was over the books that are in the canon. However, we have kicked around behind the scenes some conversation about possibly including something. The main concern I would have there is I don't want us to get out of our depth.
Yes.
And we're already a little out of our depth at times, which is why we invited a couple scholars on. We just had Dr. Amy Jill Levine from Vanderbilt Divinity, and also Father Patrick Henry Reardon on the show.
Who is just a... He's right up there with Father Tom Hopko when it comes to just depth of knowledge and understanding.
Yeah. With both of those people, I mean, we could have talked for hours.
Yeah.
but obviously you gotta end it somewhere. And
Hmm.
we tried to have a very specific focus with the questions because we want to interview them again in the future
Yeah.
and other
Hmm.
scholars. But yeah, that would be my concern with like jubilees and stuff. But who knows? I mean, anything that could be considered apocrypha um, by some group
Hmm.
could potentially fall under our banner. But really, we're trying to focus on what
Yeah.
we consider scripture.
Okay. Very cool. Well, Jamey, thank you so very much for taking time out of your day to hang out with the bald, crazy guy.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and as we can tell, I like books, and so orthodoxy is tricky when it comes to books in the
Hmm.
English-speaking world.
Yes.
It's getting better every day, but we haven't had a lot of great resources in the English-speaking world until very recently.
Yeah.
In the last generation, really, but especially the last decade or two,
Yes.
the materials have really been expanding. So a show like yours, I think, is great.
Oh,
'Cause
thanks, man.
how else? I mean, how else are people going to know what's really worth looking at? And you got to cover the stuff that's maybe not as worth looking at, but still is worth considering because it's out there.
Yeah.
So
Oh, thank you so much.
I love that you're doing it, man.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. Glory to God for all things, because that's. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
I, I'm not very good with compliments. So I'm just going to take it. Thank you. At any rate, so pimp yourself. Websites, hashtags, handles. What do you got?
Sure, yeah. So if you want to check out my music, royalruckus.com it is the thing for the podcast. It's on Ancient Faith Radio, or if you go to badbooksofthebible.com, right there we have a link to everything.
Right on.
Show notes, email list, Twitter, the whole nine. And then Brews, Beards, and Shipwrecks. It's everywhere you listen to podcasts, or you can just go to brewsbeards.com.
Right on. Excellent. And of course, for those of you watching or listening, links to all these will be down in the description. So there you
Man,
go.
thank you for having me on.
Oh,
This has been
thank
a lot of
you.
fun.
Thank you for being on. It's always a pleasure to talk to not only interesting people, but to catch up with old friends.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, and we've hung out too. Let's be clear, we're not just internet buddies.
oh yeah, yeah.
Like
Yeah, there was a chrismation
yeah,
that was it was a
yeah,
whole family, and it was awesome.
yeah. We had a good time. We need to make it happen again, though.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, this happened. What, it was like a week or two after my wife put me out, and Jamey
Oh,
and
was it?
company definitely rescued me at a time where I
Mm,
desperately needed to spend time with Orthodox Christians. So
thank God.
I'm grateful for more than just being able to hang out, but being
Yeah,
able to just be a part of
yeah.
something like that.
I didn't remember that was the circumstance, but I did remember that there were some tough things going on,
Yeah.
and it felt like such a wonderful time, and I was very hopeful that it was a nice sort of respite, a little bit of a break
Oh
from
yeah.
that difficult time.
It
You
was. It
know.
was fantastic, and it's always beautiful to see an entire family received into the church.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's
Yeah.
like there's a couple families right now that are catechumens in my church, and I'm just like, I'm over the moon excited about them. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful to see
Yeah.
not only the parents embracing the faith, but to see the kids just as enthusiastic about it. It's like
Yeah. Well,
someone's doing
I
something
love.
right.
I also love. I'm sure you'll feel the same way. I
Uh-huh.
love when people come into the church and they just run with it, and they
Yeah.
just love the Lord and love the church, and they're moving forward. I've got several godsons who have done that. One of my most recent convert friends, who is a godson. I mean, we were out a few weeks ago at dinner,
Hmm.
and an inquirer was asking us questions, and I'm being Mr. Motormouth,
Hmm.
and he jumped in, and I realized I need to shut up and let him talk, and let's hear what he's got to offer.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was great. He's clearly been reading and studying and learning, and it was good for me to shut my mouth and let the new guy have a stab at it. And turns out he's growing in his faith and knowledge of the Lord quite a lot. So
That's beautiful, man. That's fantastic. Glory to God.
yeah,
Right
isn't
on.
that a spiritual lesson? We got to learn when to shut up.
Yeah, right. I'm still working on that one.
Aren't we all?
Luckily, I can run my mouth on the internet all I want, for better or worse. All right, my dude. Well, I guess that's it for the interview. Thank you again so much for taking the time out and hang out.
Yeah, it is my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, man.
No problem at all. My love to your family and to the dogs. And
Will do, man.
right on. Well, on behalf of Spooky Cat, her mom, and myself, and probably Mr. Bennett here, please pray for me, for us. I'm trying my best to pray for you. Don't forget to go to church, say your prayers, and remember God. God bless you all.